Hi, welcome back. This is an original TalesSphere story and it's nice to have you here. Let's begin.
At Christmas, my sister stood up, pointed at my 12-year-old, and hissed, "We all know she's faking." Then her cousin snatched the wheelchair away and laughed, "Just get up and walk." I didn't cry. I made one phone call. 5 minutes later, the whole room fell silent. The dining room was too bright, the kind of bright that makes everyone's smile look pasted on. My daughter, Grace, sat in her dining chair at the table, knees tucked in close like she was trying to take up less space. My sister Tiffany pushed back from her seat so fast her napkin slid to the floor. "She's pretending," Tiffany said, arm out, finger aimed right at Grace like a prosecutor. "You can't tell me she needs all this." Grace's eyes flicked to me, then down to her hands. Across the table, Logan, Tiffany's 11-year-old, Grace's cousin, grinned like he'd been handed a script. He reached beside Grace, grabbed the wheelchair by the handles, and yanked it out of her reach with a quick, triumphant pull. "Come on," he laughed, dragging it backward. "Stand up, walk." I didn't argue. I didn't beg them to stop. I slid my phone out of my pocket, unlocked it with my thumb, and tapped one starred contact like it was muscle memory. The screen rang once, twice, and then a face appeared, close, calm, and absolutely not part of our family. At first, people tried to talk over it. Then the voice on my screen started asking questions, and 5 minutes later, the whole room fell silent. We'd gotten to my parents' place in Columbus a little early because Grace moves slower when she's tired, and I hate feeling rushed with her. Snow had crusted along the curb, and the front steps were slick. Dad came down a step to meet us, steadying Grace while I tipped the wheelchair up behind her. Then my dad, Mike, took the casserole dish from my hands with his usual big guy gentleness and said, "I got it, Nat." Inside, the house smelled like ham, cinnamon candles, and my mother's need to impress. Mom, Karen, had already set the table with the good plates, the ones we weren't allowed to touch when I was a kid. Grace lowered herself into the dining chair by the window, careful and practiced, and I parked her wheelchair beside her, angled so she could grab it without asking. Mom's eyes landed on the chair immediately. "Is that going to be right there?" she asked, like it was a muddy boot. "It's where Grace can reach it," I said, keeping my voice even. Grace tried a small smile. "I'm fine right now." "I know," I told her. "And we plan for not fine too." Dad cleared his throat, already trying to smooth the air. Okay. Food's almost ready." My mother didn't answer me. She just adjusted a place setting so she wouldn't have to look at the chair, and that was my first warning. Tiffany arrived late, of course, like the clock should have waited for her. The front door banged open and cold air rushed in, followed by her perfume and her laugh. "Merry Christmas!" she called, loud enough for the neighbors, then she swept into the dining room like she owned the floorboards. Madison, 13 and already skilled at eye-rolling, trailed behind her with her phone in her hand. Logan ran ahead, socks sliding on the wood, and skidded to a stop when he saw Grace's wheelchair parked beside the table. "Oh, you brought the chariot," he said, snickering. Grace's shoulders tightened. She kept her face neutral, but I saw her fingers press into her napkin like she was anchoring herself. Tiffany's eyes flicked to the chair and then to me. "We're doing the wheelchair thing again?" she said, like it was a themed accessory. "It's not a thing," I said. "It's what keeps her safe." Tiffany's mouth twitched like she'd tasted something sour. "Uh-huh." Mom laughed lightly, the way she laughs when she wants the moment to pass. "Let's just have dinner." Logan drifted closer to Grace's side of the table, hands hovering near the chair like it was a toy left out for him. and Grace pulled her feet back, instinctively guarding her space. Grandpa Howard, my dad's father, Grace's great-grandpa, sat at the far end, where he always sat, quiet and straight-backed in a cardigan that smelled faintly like aftershave. He wasn't frail, not really, just older in a way that made people talk around him instead of to him. He watched everyone come in, watched Tiffany take over the room without asking, watched my mother rearrange plates like she could rearrange reality. When I helped Grace scoot her dining chair in, Grandpa's eyes softened. "Hey, kiddo," he said, voice steady. "How's school treating you?" Grace's face changed immediately. She sat up a little. "Good. I got an A on my history test." "That so?" Grandpa nodded like that mattered, like she mattered. "Proud of you." Tiffany let out a short laugh. "History, sure. Must be nice to sit all day." Grandpa didn't look at Tiffany. He just kept his gaze on Grace, like Tiffany was background noise. "You been drawing lately?" he asked. Grace nodded. "I brought my sketchbook in the car." "Smart." He gave her a small wink. "Always have an exit plan." I felt my throat tighten, just for a second, because it sounded like a joke but didn't feel like one. Grandpa's eyes slid across the table to the wheelchair and then back to my face. It was the kind of look that said, "I see everything," and I knew he was taking notes. Dinner started the way it always did. My dad carving, my mom directing traffic, Tiffany narrating everyone's life like she had the official version. Grace ate slowly, careful with her energy, laughing at the right places so nobody could accuse her of being in a mood. Halfway through, Madison stood and angled her phone toward Grace. "Hold on," she said. "We need a picture." Grace blinked. "Okay." Madison frowned at the angle. "Can you stand? Just for a second. It'll look better if everyone's the same height." "I can't," Grace said quietly. Tiffany's fork paused midair. She looked up like she'd been waiting for that sentence. "Can't," she repeated, a little too bright. "Or won't." "Tiff," my dad warned, soft but firm. Tiffany ignored him. She pushed back her chair and stood, placing both hands on the table as if she were about to deliver a toast. Her eyes locked on Grace, and her voice sharpened. "She's faking," Tiffany said, loud enough to make sure nobody missed it. "We all tiptoe around it, but come on." Grace went still, like her body had become a statue and her mind had left the room. And my mother didn't tell Tiffany to stop. It didn't turn into a debate. It turned into a pile-on, fast and practiced, like everyone had been rehearsing without me. My mom leaned forward, eyebrows raised in that concerned face she wears when she wants to be cruel politely. "I've been thinking the same thing," Karen said. "She's fine when it suits her." Denise, my aunt, made a small noise and looked down at her plate, torn between discomfort and loyalty. Dad set his carving knife down with a thunk. "This is Christmas," he muttered. "Can we not?" Tiffany waved him off. "I'm just saying what everyone sees. She loves the attention. It's manipulative." Grace swallowed hard. "I don't—" "You're 12. Mom cut in like that was proof. "Kids do things." I felt my own voice stay low, almost boring. "Grace has a medical condition," I said. "You don't get to vote on it." Tiffany tilted her head. "Oh, here we go. Natalie, don't make it a whole production." Grace's cheeks flushed, and I saw her knees shift under the table like she was considering standing just to make it stop. I put my hand on her forearm. One squeeze. A silent, "No." My dad looked at me, helpless, like he wanted peace more than truth. And then Logan decided he wanted a turn. Logan slid out of his chair and walked behind Grace, where the wheelchair sat within reach like a lifeline. He grabbed the handles with both hands, eyes sparkling. "I'm gonna fix you," he said, loud and proud, like he'd invented the cure. "Logan," I snapped. One word, sharp. He yanked anyway, rolling the chair backward until it bumped into the buffet. Grace's hand shot out toward where it should have been and grabbed nothing but air. Her breath hitched, and she looked at that empty space like someone had pulled the floor away. "Stand up," Logan said, laughing. "Just do it." Nobody moved fast enough. Tiffany's mouth curled like she was entertained. My mother didn't stand. Even my dad froze in that awful in-between where he wanted it to stop but didn't want to challenge Tiffany. So I stood. Not to yell, not to plead. I stepped behind Grace like a wall, pulled my phone out and hit call. When the screen lit up and the video connected, a face appeared. It looked straight into our dining room like it could see every lie on the table, and the smugness died all at once. But let me back up. When I was 9, Tiffany knocked over my birthday cake before anyone could cut it. It slid off the table in slow motion, frosting, candles, the whole thing, and splattered onto the kitchen floor. Tiffany stared at it for half a second, then started crying like she'd been injured. Mom rushed to her. "Oh, honey," Karen cooed, pulling Tiffany into her arms. Tiffany pointed at me through tears. "Natalie did it." I opened my mouth, shocked. "I didn't even touch—" "Don't," Mom warned, sharp now. She turned to me with that look that meant I'd already lost. "Why would you do that? It's your sister." Dad sighed like the truth was inconvenient. "Nat, just apologize." I stared at the ruined cake and felt something settle into place. The facts didn't matter. What mattered was Tiffany's version. I said, "I'm sorry," even though my throat burned saying it. Tiffany stopped crying instantly. She wiped her face and smirked at me over Mom's shoulder. That was the day I learned the rule in our house. Tiffany decides what happened, and everyone else nods along. As adults, Tiffany got better at it. She didn't just rewrite moments. She rewrote me. At a neighborhood cookout, she introduced me to her friends like I was a character in a comedy routine. "This is Natalie," she said, laughing. "She's always so intense. She's the type who complains if the napkins aren't folded right." Her friends chuckled, looking at me like I'd missed the joke. I tried to correct it once. "I don't care about napkins," I said. "I care about my kid not getting sick from undercooked chicken." Tiffany's eyes widened dramatically. "See?" she announced. "Always dramatic." Everyone laughed harder. I stood there holding a paper plate, realizing that defending myself was part of the entertainment. After that, I learned to go quiet in public. I let Tiffany narrate because correcting her only made me the villain in her story. It wasn't bravery, it was survival. And then Grace got sick, and my silence stopped being harmless. The first time I brought Grace's wheelchair to a family gathering, it was supposed to be simple. We were going to my parents' house for brunch, and Grace had been in a flare all week. Weak, shaky, stubbornly pretending she was fine. The chair wasn't a statement. It was a tool. Tiffany met us at the door and looked down at the wheels like she'd found contraband. "Wow," she said. "So we're committed to this now." Grace tried to joke. "It's just for long walks." Karen's face tightened with that fake worry. "Natalie, are you sure this is good for her? I don't want her getting dependent." "She can't get dependent on safety," I said. Tiffany leaned toward Grace and lowered her voice just enough to feel private. "You know," she murmured, "if you just push through, your legs won't forget." Grace's smile flickered. Later in the bathroom, she whispered to me, "Mom, I'm sorry. I don't want them mad." I knelt and looked her in the eye. "You never apologize for your body," I said, steady. "Not to them. Not to anyone." Grace nodded, but her eyes stayed worried. And I realized my family wasn't worried about Grace's health at all. They were worried about Grace taking up space. The kids learned fast because kids always do. At Thanksgiving, Madison lined everyone up for a photo and kept repositioning Grace like she was a prop. "If you stand," Madison said, sweet as syrup, "it'll look normal." Grace tried. She pushed up with shaking arms, took one step, then two, face going pale. Tiffany's eyes lit up like she'd just been handed evidence. "See?" she said loud. "She can do it." Grace sat back down quickly, breathing hard. Logan started watching for good moments. If Grace laughed, he'd announce, "Guess you're cured." If she carried a plate from the counter, he'd yell, "Look, walking!" The adults chuckled like it was harmless. I watched my child turn into a test. By Christmas, I wasn't just bringing a wheelchair to dinner. I was bringing a line. And my thumb already knew exactly who I'd call, because months ago Dr. Erica had told me, "If anyone ever puts Grace on the spot, call me." Back in the dining room, my phone sat on the table in front of Grace like a small spotlight. The video call was live, volume up, and nobody seemed to remember how to breathe. I stood behind Grace with my hands on the back of her dining chair, steady, not possessive, just there. Tiffany recovered first because she always does. She forced a laugh. "Natalie, what are you doing? Are you seriously calling someone right now?" "Yes," I said. Karen's voice went thin. "On Christmas?" Grace stared at the phone screen, eyes wide, like she was afraid the person on the other end would also be disappointed in her. I leaned down and murmured, "You don't have to say a word." Grace nodded once anyway. "Permission." On the screen, the caller adjusted the camera, and a quiet, professional face came into focus. No smile, no family warmth, just attention. Tiffany leaned toward the phone like she could intimidate it. "Hi," she said, sharp. "Who is this?" The woman didn't answer Tiffany right away. Her eyes went to Grace first, then to me. "Natalie?" she asked calmly. I nodded once. "I'm here." The woman's expression didn't change, but the room did. The air shifted from smug to scared, and then she introduced herself. The woman on my screen spoke like she'd done this 1,000 times, calm, clear, impossible to derail. "Hello," she said. "I'm Dr. Erica. I'm Grace's doctor. I was expecting your call." My mother made a small sound, like a swallowed gasp. Tiffany's face tightened, the way it does when she realizes the audience changed. Logan's grin vanished, replaced by a kid's sudden fear of being in trouble. Dr. Erica's eyes flicked to Grace. "Hi, Grace," she said gently. Grace's voice came out small. "Hi." Dr. Erica looked back at the room through the camera. "Natalie tells me people are questioning your mobility aid tonight." Tiffany tried to laugh again, but it came out brittle. "Okay, wow. This is a lot." Dr. Erica didn't react to Tiffany's tone at all. She just waited, like silence was a tool she owned. When Tiffany didn't know what to do with that, she filled it with bluster. "It was a joke," Tiffany said quickly. "Kids mess around. Nobody's hurting anyone." Dr. Erica's gaze stayed steady. "Is the wheelchair currently out of reach?" Logan looked down at his socks. I answered, "Yes, Logan took it." Dr. Erica nodded once, like she'd just confirmed a lab result. And Tiffany started to realize this wasn't a family argument anymore. Dr. Erica's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Merry Christmas," she said. Then her voice went flat. "Now stop calling my patient a liar." The words landed like a dropped plate. Nobody laughed. Dad's hands went still on the edge of the table. Denise covered her mouth with her napkin, eyes shiny. Tiffany lifted her chin. "Excuse me? I didn't call anyone a liar. I said she acts fine sometimes." Dr. Erica didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "You called her fake," she said. "That's calling her a liar." Karen's cheeks went pale under her makeup. She opened her mouth, then shut it. Tiffany pointed at Grace like the phone could see her finger. "I've seen her walk," she said. "I saw it with my own eyes." "So," Dr. Erica cut in, clean and precise. "Yes," she said. "Sometimes she can take a few steps." Tiffany's face brightened like she'd won. "And that doesn't mean she's fine," Dr. Erica continued, same tone. "Fluctuation is part of it." The brightness drained out of Tiffany's eyes. Dr. Erica didn't pause long enough for Tiffany to recover. "You're using her best moments as evidence against her," she said, each word clear. "That's not logic. That's cruelty." Madison stared at the phone like she'd never heard an adult speak that directly before. Tiffany glanced around the table, searching for backup, but nobody moved. And for the first time all night, the story wasn't Tiffany's to tell. Dr. Erica shifted her gaze slightly, like she was addressing the whole table now. "When Grace has a good moment," she said, "she tries to act normal. She tries to keep up. She smiles so you don't look uncomfortable." Grace's throat bobbed. She didn't speak, but her eyes stayed locked on Dr. Erica's face. "I've watched her push herself so hard to look fine that she hurts herself afterward," Dr. Erica continued. "Pain later, so people are nicer now." My mother's hand trembled as she picked up her water glass. She didn't drink. Dr. Erica's voice stayed clinical, but her words cut. "She's 12, she said. "She's not manipulating you. She's surviving you." Tiffany's mouth opened, and nothing came out. Denise let out a quiet sob and wiped her face quickly, embarrassed to be the only one showing emotion. Dad's jaw clenched, a slow, late anger taking shape. Grace's shoulders dropped, like someone had finally let her set down a heavy bag she'd been carrying for months. I felt one hot pulse behind my eyes, but I kept my face steady. Grace needed steady, and Dr. Erica wasn't finished. Dr. Erica's eyes narrowed slightly, the first hint of irritation. "Now," she said, "about the wheelchair." Logan flinched. "That chair is safety," Dr. Erica said. "Removing it isn't a joke. It's taking away her protection." Tiffany scoffed, weakly. "Oh my God, she didn't fall." "You got lucky," Dr. Erica replied immediately. "If she'd gone down tonight, you'd be calling an ambulance, not laughing." The sentence sucked the air out of the room. Even Madison looked nauseous, like she'd just pictured it too clearly. Logan's face went red. He whispered, "I was just kidding." Dr. Erica didn't soften for him. "Kids copy what they see," she said. "Tonight, he copied you." Tiffany's eyes snapped to Logan, then back to the phone, furious at being blamed. Karen stared at the tablecloth as if the pattern could save her. And Grandpa Howard, at the far end, stayed silent, watching, unmoving, absorbing every word. The shame in that room wasn't loud. It was heavy. Tiffany tried one last escape hatch. "We didn't know," she said, throwing her hands up. "Nobody explained it." Dr. Erica didn't blink. "You didn't ask," she said. That was it. No lecture. No extra sentence. Just the fact. Karen's lips parted, but no excuse formed fast enough. Dr. Erica's tone turned instructive, like she was giving discharge directions. "Here's what happens now," she said. "You return the wheelchair to where Grace can reach it." Logan made a move but froze, waiting to be told he was allowed. "And you apologize," Dr. Erica continued. "Not to her mother. Apologize to her." Silence stretched. Tiffany looked like she might explode, but she didn't want to explode in front of the doctor. My mother stared at Grace like she'd never actually seen her before. Grace kept her hands folded, still, like she was afraid any movement would be judged. Dr. Erica waited, calm, unmoving. The quiet was a kind of pressure, and nobody in that room knew how to breathe through it. I didn't wait for them to find their courage. I stepped around the table, walked to the buffet, and rolled Grace's wheelchair back myself. I brought it to her side and locked the wheels with a practiced click. Grace's fingers brushed the armrest like she was confirming it was real. Tiffany's voice came out small and angry. "This is insane," she muttered. Denise whispered to Grace, "Honey, I'm so sorry," tears sliding despite her effort. My mother's face had gone the color of paper. She looked at Grace and tried to speak, but the words snagged in her throat. Dr. Erica's voice returned, softer but still firm. "Grace," she said, "you did nothing wrong." Grace blinked hard and nodded once. I picked up my phone. "Thank you," I told Dr. Erica. "Call me if you need me," she said. Then the screen went dark. I didn't announce anything. I didn't give a speech. I slid my hand under Grace's elbow and said, "We're going home." Dad stood quickly. "Nat," I looked at him. "Not tonight." Grace and I made it to the door without anyone stopping us. Outside, in the cold, my phone started buzzing like it had a second life. By the next morning, Tiffany had a new story ready, delivered in a family group chat like a press release. "Natalie called a doctor on Christmas to make us look bad," the message read. It was a harmless joke, and she weaponized Grace to embarrass everyone. My mom added, "We're all just concerned." Denise typed, then deleted, then finally sent a single shaky, "It wasn't funny." Dad sent, "Let's all cool off." Tiffany replied immediately, "Exactly. Natalie needs to calm down." I stared at the screen while Grace colored at the coffee table, her wheelchair beside her like it belonged there. Because it did. The rewrite wasn't surprising. It was automatic. Tiffany couldn't live in a world where she'd been wrong. I typed one message, short and factual. "A medical professional told you to apologize to Grace. If you're calling it a joke, you learned nothing." Tiffany responded with a laughing emoji. I didn't argue further. I tapped the group settings, muted it, and blocked Tiffany first. Then anyone who called that night a joke. The quiet that followed wasn't sad. It was clean. The next pressure came through my front door because my mother has never respected a boundary she didn't choose. 2 days after Christmas, Karen showed up on my porch with a tin of cookies like sugar could erase anything. I opened the door enough to step outside and close it behind me. "You're really doing this?" she asked, eyes wide. "Cutting off your family?" "I'm protecting my child," I said. Karen's voice sharpened. "Tiffany feels attacked. You made us all look terrible." "You made yourselves look terrible," I replied, still calm. "I just stopped you from doing it in private." Dad's car pulled up behind her, and he got out slowly, hands in his coat pockets. His eyes looked tired. "Nat," he began, the peacemaker again. I held up a hand. "If you want to see Grace, you can. Here, with respect. No commentary. No concern." Mom scoffed. "So now we have rules." "Yes," I said. And if Tiffany contacts us again, or if you keep minimizing, the answer is no. Dad swallowed, then nodded once, small. Okay, he said. I'll stop passing messages. I get it. Mom stared at him like he'd betrayed her. I didn't argue. I stepped back toward my door, and that's when my phone lit up with Grandpa Howard's name. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, and answered. Grandpa's voice on the line was quiet, controlled, and sharper than I'd heard in years. Natalie, he said. No greeting fluff. I saw what happened. I leaned against my hallway wall and kept my voice low so Grace wouldn't hear everything. Yeah, I said. You did. I also saw what didn't happen, Grandpa replied. No one actually stopped it when it mattered. Not your mother, not your father, and Tiffany. He exhaled through his nose, more anger than breath. That woman humiliated a child. My stomach tightened. They're rewriting it now, I said. Like always. I know, Grandpa said. They tried it with me. Tiffany called yesterday to tell me you caused a scene. I almost laughed, but it came out dry. Of course she did. Grandpa's voice dropped even lower. Listen carefully, he said. I'm not leaving a penny to people who humiliate a child. My hand gripped the phone harder. Grandpa! I mean it, he cut in. I'm calling my lawyer. You and Grace will be protected. Tiffany gets nothing, and neither will anyone who backed her by laughing, filming, or taking that chair. That includes Madison and Logan. I closed my eyes for a second, not from joy, just from the weight of it. You don't have to do that, I said, even as part of me understood why he wanted to. I do, Grandpa replied. Because nobody else did anything when it mattered. Then he added, Mark will set a meeting. You'll come. And I realized this wasn't just family drama anymore. It was paperwork. The lawyer's office smelled like coffee and printer toner, and the chairs were the kind that force you to sit up straight. Grandpa Howard sat at the small conference table with his hands folded, expression unreadable. Beside him was Mark, his attorney, a calm man with glasses and a stack of documents clipped into neat piles. Tiffany arrived 10 minutes late and walked in like she was owed an apology. Karen followed her, wringing her hands. Dad came in last, looking like he wished the floor would open. Mark nodded politely. We're here to update Mr. Howard's estate documents, he said, including setting up a trust for Grace, with Natalie as trustee. Tiffany laughed. Okay. Why am I here? Grandpa didn't look at her when he answered. So you can't claim you didn't hear it, he said. Tiffany's smile faltered. Hear what? Grandpa's eyes finally lifted. I'm changing my will, he said. Natalie and Grace are protected and supported. You, he nodded toward Tiffany, get nothing. And I'm not rewarding anyone who helped you humiliate that child by laughing, filming, or taking her chair. Karen gasped. Howard, please! Tiffany's face flushed deep red. That's stealing, she snapped, pointing at me like she always does. She turned you against me. Grandpa didn't flinch. No, he said. You did. Mark slid papers forward. Mr. Howard has made his intentions clear, he said. This is lawful, and it will be witnessed and filed. Dad finally spoke, voice small. Tiff, stop. Tiffany spun on him, shocked. Are you serious? Dad didn't answer her. He looked at Grandpa, then at me, and gave a tiny nod like he was choosing a side for the first time in his life. Grandpa signed his name with a steady hand, and Tiffany realized her control didn't reach this table. 1 year later, Grandpa Howard was gone. The funeral was quiet, and so was our life afterward. Quiet in the way that feels safe, not empty. Grace and I didn't go to my parents' house afterward for the family gathering because we weren't family props anymore. We went home, made hot chocolate, and watched a movie with the volume up. A few months later, Mark called me with the final number once everything settled. The value of the trust Grandpa set aside for Grace. $517,640. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the figure, not because it felt like a prize, but because it felt like Grandpa's last boundary, ink on paper. The money paid for consistent care, better equipment, and the kind of therapy schedule that didn't depend on me begging insurance every month. More than that, it paid for peace. With no constant invalidation, Grace stopped bracing for judgment. Her flare-ups got less intense. She started walking more on her good days because she wasn't wasting energy proving anything to anyone. We stayed no contact with Tiffany and anyone who called that night a joke. Dad visits us now, alone, and he doesn't comment on the wheelchair. He asks Grace about school and listens. Grace is almost recovered, so tell me, did Grandpa do the right thing, and did I do the right thing cutting them off? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more.